They look to the skies. They study the maps, counting the warheads and tracking the fleets. They wait for the flash, the Iron Rain, the moment history explodes into World War III, a nuclear baptism promised by the prophets of the last century. But the history you are taught, it is a comfort, a lie built on the ghosts of old empires and their mechanical obsessions. You are waiting for the echo of a nightmare that has already been erased, an analog threat in a digital age. The next war, it will not be announced by the thunder of 1,000 wings. It will not be fought by men marching under a falling sky, their boots heavy with mud and blood. It will begin in the silence, in the invisible spaces between what you call reality and what you believe to be truth. It will be a war of algorithms and arbitrage, of whispers and wiretaps, a conflict fought over the very structure of existence. It has already begun. The empires of the 21st century have learned the fundamental lesson of modern power. Destruction is inefficient. Why bomb a city, incurring the cost of reconstruction and the condemnation of the world, when you can simply drain its lifeblood? Why invade a nation when you can render its currency worthless and its populace unemployable? The first, coldest front of this new global conflict is not a desert trench. It is a ledger. The battle for economic dominance is the bloodless, invisible siege that determines who starves and who thrives. It is warfare by fiat and finance. Look at the relentless, grinding pressure of the U.S. China tech war. This is not a skirmish over a distant island or a disputed border. It is a grand strategic maneuver over the soul of the future. The choke point is not the South China Sea. It is a $300 billion semiconductor industry. America, wielding a hammer of export controls and sanctions, attempts to cripple Beijing's access to most advanced chips, the very silicon brains required for artificial intelligence, hypersonic missiles, and quantum computing. This is an economic decapitation strike designed to paralyze China's ability to lead the next technological revolution. It is an attempt to enforce a technological singularity that only one side can inhabit. China, in turn, retaliates not with an air campaign, but by threatening supply chain. They hoard rare earth minerals, the elemental keys to the West's high-tech machinery, from magnets to electric vehicles. They challenge intellectual property laws and aggressively invest in state-led industrial policy to achieve complete technological autonomy, the doctrine of Made in China 2025 being their declaration of financial war. Each move is a calculated financial missile designed not to kill soldiers, but to kill a nation's ability to innovate and compete. And what are the foundation of global trade itself? The U.S. dollar, the supreme currency, the anchor of commodities, the ultimate arbiter of value. To challenge the dollar is to commit an act of financial war, so profound it threatens the stability of the reigning empire. The accelerating rise of multipolar trade blocs, BRICS nations using local currencies, the development of Russian and Chinese-led alternative payment systems. These are not mere trade agreements. They are bayonet charges against the structure of the reigning empire. They seek to shatter the financial supremacy that has upheld American global power for 8 decades. The new conflict demands a new kind of weapon. The weapon is debt, weaponized by China's Belt and Road Initiative, locking developing nations into dependency. The weapon is sanctions, transforming swift access into a privilege granted only to the obedient. The weapon is a sudden withdrawal of liquidity or the strategic manipulation of sovereign credit ratings. It is a slow, agonizing suffocation, a death by 1,000 cuts in the balance sheet, where national economies fade to black. We are now witnessing nations not conquer rivals, but outsource their collapse. They watch their enemies wither from within, and no one fires a single kinetic shot. The industrial heart of a modern society, the lights, the communication networks, the factories, the homes, it all relies on a hidden, churning dependence. Energy. In the old wars, an enemy targeted a nation's naval convoys or railway lines. In this war, they target the thermostat and the gas tap. The Russian Federation's calculated use of natural gas leverage against Europe, specifically following the escalation of the conflict in Ukraine, serves as a definitive case study in this new geopolitical art. Pipelines like Nord Stream were not just infrastructure, they were levers of strategic control. When the flow was cut or even merely threatened through ambiguous maintenance schedules and political maneuvering, the response was instantaneous. Not a military mobilization, but an economic and societal panic. Inflation soared. Energy-intensive industries like steel and fertilizer production shuttered across the continent. The European public faced a chilling, existential choice: support the military defense of a distant ally, or watch their own homes freeze, and their own cost of living spiral into oblivion. This is the genius of energy manipulation. It transforms a nation's domestic stability, its very comfort, into a foreign policy weapon. It turns winter into a silent, strategic killer. The goal is not military defeat, but political surrender, to force the enemy electorate to abandon its leadership simply by making the cost of survival unbearable. The geopolitical jockeying over the transition to green energy is no less volatile. The race for dominance in lithium, cobalt, and rare earth elements, essential for batteries, renewable grids, and advanced military tech, is creating new, concentrated vulnerabilities. The nation that controls the flow of these future fuels, the nation that dictates the manufacturing standards for solar and wind power, will hold the key to the next century's industrial engine. The battle for the South China Sea, often framed as territorial, is fundamentally a struggle for supply lines of the energy future. Even the simplest infrastructure is a target. The vulnerability of undersea cables and pipelines, unprotected, miles from shore, represents a massive, systemic risk. A single act of sabotage on a key fiber optic line or an oil transit choke point like the Strait of Hormuz could plunge entire regions into darkness and collapse global markets instantly. The new emperors understand that a war fought with cold and darkness is far cleaner. It leaves the infrastructure intact, but breaks the fundamental, essential will of the people. The most devastating weapons of World War III are not forged in steel mills. They are written in code. This is the Silicon War, fought by armies of unseen programmers, nation-states disguised as anonymous collectives. A single, elegant line of malicious code can achieve what 100 bombers cannot. It can shut down a national power grid simultaneously, sending millions back to the 19th century. It can seize control of a major hospital network, plunging operating rooms into darkness and deleting patient data. It can cripple a nation's financial infrastructure, making every recorded bank account balance instantly and irrevocably zero. This is the power of the digital siege. Consider the ongoing, relentless skirmishes between major powers: the U.S., China, Russia, Iran. These are not isolated acts of crime, but sophisticated, continuous digital espionage and sabotage campaigns. State-sponsored hackers are probing critical infrastructure, embedding sleepers, malicious code that lies dormant for months or even years, waiting for a kill switch command that could be issued by a rival power at the moment of kinetic tension. The SolarWinds attacks, the Stuxnet virus, these were only public rehearsals. The main event remains hidden. And looming over all of this is artificial intelligence. AI is the great equalizer, the final weapon that may not even require human hands to pull the trigger. When AI is integrated into command and control systems, into cyber defense platforms, and into the targeting of drone swarms, the speed of war will accelerate beyond human reaction time. The time between threat detection and counter-response will shrink from minutes to milliseconds. The decision to launch a counterstrike or to escalate a defensive measure will be delegated to a machine capable of processing more data in 1 second than a human general could in a lifetime. This is the ultimate danger of autonomous warfare. The human element, the pause for ethical reflection or political negotiation, is erased from the kill chain. This technological hyperspeed creates a world of algorithmic brinkmanship, where miscalculation is instant and catastrophic. The greatest danger is not an intentional reasoned strike, but an AI-driven mistake, a feedback loop of code gone rogue, escalating a minor incident into a global exchange before any human can understand the causality. The first casualty in this scenario is not the city, but human control. We are building the weapons that will fight the next war without us, and the architects of the system, having forfeited their decision-making to the silicon mind, may soon become its first unintentional casualties. The most difficult fortress to defend is not the physical border. It is the human mind. The modern war machine understood that to defeat a nation, you do not need to shatter its government or its physical capital. You must shatter its belief in reality itself. You must take away its common language of fact. This is the age of information warfare, a psychological campaign waged on every screen, in every feed, in every conversation. Propaganda is no longer a clumsy pamphlet dropped from a plane. It is a hyper-targeted, algorithmically refined message designed to exploit your deepest fears, your partisan loyalties, and your most primal biases. It is the use of weaponized doubt. Nations are now engaged in massive campaigns of digital social manipulation. State-backed troll farms work around the clock to amplify internal divisions, erode public trust in institutions, whether media, science, or government, and pit citizens against one another. The goal is cognitive fragmentation, to make a society so internally fractured, so convinced of its own decay and so polarized, that it loses the will to act in its own defense, unable to agree on what the threat actually is. Look at the extreme political turmoil across the West, the intense polarization, the inability to agree on simple facts or shared history. Much of this is organic, but it is meticulously weaponized by foreign adversaries. They don't need to physically overthrow the government. They just need to make the democratic structure ungovernable through engineered gridlock and paralyzing mistrust. The enemy is not outside the gates. It is amplified inside your neighbor's mind. And the ultimate weapon in this war is surveillance capitalism, the relentless 24/7 collection of personal data by governments and corporations creates a detailed, predictive map of the individual and collective psyche. They know what you fear. They know what you desire. They know the exact emotional and political message required to trigger your emotional response. They can manufacture outrage, create panic, or ensure apathy with digital precision. When